Veterans of Reddit, we hear all the time about the horrors of war, but what is the most positive, funny or beautiful experience you've had in the military? After basic training, I spent another 4 months training for my actual job. I ended up becoming pretty good friends with someone in my class. Anytime we needed partners in class, it was the two of us. Any free time we had, we hung out together. Pretty much every waking minute of that 4 months we were together. I was National Guard and he was active duty, so after graduation I went home and he was stationed halfway across the country. Since this was before social media, we eventually lost contact, but anytime I would meet someone from his base, I would ask about him. About 5 years after graduation, which was the last time I had seen him, I was getting ready for roll call and I heard a familiar voice. I instantly knew who it was. He had gotten out of active duty and joined my guard unit. We picked right up where we left off. For the next year or so until I got out, anytime we were on base, we were together. It was really nice to know he was safe and to have my friend back. When I was in the US Navy a long time ago during the Cold War, we were steaming out of Guantanamo Bay and passed very close by a Russian warship. Everyone was topside on both ships eyeballing each other. I'm not sure who began, but someone started waving. As we passed each other, both ships were waving, hooting and whistling at each other in greeting. I remember thinking that even though we were enemies, that day we were all just sailors at sea. Back in my army days I was in the field and all we ate were MREs. A bit of a backstory, the US Gov liked to have everything made in America when possible. There is a company called Lighthouse for the Blind Skillcraft that gets a crap ton of tax breaks for being a disabled blind-owned company and makes everything from toilet paper to pens and has the market cornered. Lowest bidder wins. Their products are always consistent. So this dude in my squad rummages through the MRE box and cherry picks the certain one that always has the spiced pound cake as a snack. His favorite. He's practically rocking back and forth in his excitement like a kid waiting for the prize in a cereal box as he pulls open the MRE pouch. He reaches in, pulls out what should be the cake and is met with a 5x5-inch polymer square of vacuum pack nothing. Completely flat and empty packet with spiced pound cake written on it. He crushed it in his fist, held it up and screamed, "Fricking blind people." On this cold, miserable, rainy day, his morale and spirit were irreparably crushed. I can almost taste the despair. Funniest, while on patrol at night in Afghanistan my medic had to take a crap. We halted our patrol and I went out with him for security while he dropped one in a bush. Seconds later a drone that was flying overhead for us warned my squad leader Spartan 2 to be advised there is an armed, pantless man a few dozen meters behind you. Advise? That meant somewhere in the busy area tactical operations center a lot of very high ranking people were watching my friend take a crap. Beautiful. Watching the sunset over the Hindu Kush. Funniest, desert storm. It was cold. My tent mates were standing on a berm that surrounded a trash fire. They were enjoying the warmth of the fire when I heard one of them scream, "It's gonna blow." I looked over just in time to see a couple of them diving off the berm followed by a muffled explosion. The fellow who didn't dive off of the berm fell down. We raced over to the fallen comrade to rescue him, thinking there was some sort of explosive that wound up in the pit and wounded him. When we reached his side we discovered that he was covered with pork and beans. A container of pork and beans was tossed into the fire pit unvented and exploded in the fire. We later awarded him with a purple bean for injuries received while warming himself. Beautiful. I commanded a humanitarian mission to Swaziland and we were doing a medical clinic at a rural schoolhouse. There was a soccer field but no ball in sight. Tons of kids milling around with nothing to do. I gave my driver some money and told him to go find me 2 soccer balls. 3 hours later he returned with the balls. I took one to the middle of the field and started playing around a bit. Within 30 seconds the field was swarmed with kids playing soccer. Gave the second ball to a teacher. We packed up to leave around sunset. As we drove off I looked back and those kids were having a blast playing soccer. I accidentally blew up a can of lasagna during Desert Storm, right next to our TOW vehicle. I was finding little chunks of noodle in our camo net for months. I served on board a fast attack nuclear submarine in the US Navy in the mid-90s. Funniest, in the middle of a 6-month deployment, we happened to be pulling into Guam on Halloween. The entire topside crew dressed as pirates. We made a fake cannon out of old spare parts, duct tape, and silver paint. The captain of our boat wore an eye patch, bandana, and a fake parrot someone built. We even flew the Jolly Roger under the US flag. Our squadron commander was apparently not amused, but we were a pretty good boat, so nothing came of it. Beautiful. Everywhere we went had a certain beauty and charm, but nothing compared to surfacing in the Arctic Circle and actually being able to walk around on the polar ice cap. It is indescribably awesome and makes you think you are on another planet. So many. These are things I'll miss about the military. Sharing a 4-man room. While in Jordan, we each had our own little hooches set up for privacy. Nothing huge, but enough to live in. On those bases there are boxes upon boxes of water everywhere. So when our friend went to sleep, we literally walled him in with boxes of water. We go to sleep, excited for the surprise in the morning of him opening his hooch only to be shut in. Well, in the middle of the night we hear a giant crash followed by what the frick. Apparently he had to go to the bathroom so bad and he decided to run out of his area, not expecting to run into a 6-foot tall stack of water boxes. I still laugh typing this. War is heck, guys. Yep, Jack Shacks and pee bottles. The funniest moment I've experienced is seeing the things people will do for money. Skittles. We were out in the field for about a month and people were having sugar withdrawals. We ate exclusively MREs and once in a blue moon, one of them would have Skittles. I kid you not. People would buy the single pack of Skittles for $30 to $50. They would also eat dry lint that was under the dryer for God knows how long for $20. Good times, good times. Marine here. So back when I was a young Lance Corporal, I was stationed at Cherry Point, NC. It had been a real rough day with the command treating us like crap. Field day didn't go over well, and it was towards the end of the day on a Friday. So we're standing there in formation while our gunny is just going the frick off when, as is fairly common being that our barracks is real close to the flight line and we're air wing, an AV-8B Harrier interrupts our gunny by loudly hovering just over the tree line behind us out of sight. Now it was a very windy day that day and a seagull just so happened to be floating over the formation, wings stretched out facing into the wind, not moving, just floating in place. My buddy standing next to me nudges me and points up at the seagull and shouts over the Harrier, "Huh, that bird is loud as frick." I immediately burst out laughing along with all those around us. Our gunny comes over off asking us why the frick we're dicking around in formation and my friend casually just points back up to the seagull and shouts over the Harrier, "Just thought it was crazy how fricking loud that seagull is, gunnery sergeant." Our gunny immediately turns beet red and begins to lose his bearing with laughter. He said, "Very well, that is an odd thing to hear coming out of a seagull's butthole," and all of us had a laugh. After that the tone changed and our gunny relaxed and let us go for the weekend. I don't know if it's particularly super funny or beautiful, just one of those moments that always stuck with me because it turned a real crap day into a not so bad one really fast. It's definitely hilarious. I can't read "that bird is loud as frick" without losing my crap. My grandfather during World War II. He was Luxembourgish and thus forced to fight for Germany as a medic. My grandmother was in the resistance. My grandfather used to tell me on Easter Sunday, everyone stopped fighting. On one particular Sunday, he decided to hold mass on his own. He was a religious and very smart man. To his surprise, he was joined by 2 Russian soldiers, another German soldat, 1 Pole and 1 Finn. They all held mass together, and incredibly, they were all fluent in Latin so they could communicate with one another. He said that was his fondest memory of an otherwise horrific war. That's probably one of the most beautiful stories in the entire thread. We were returning to ship by getting picked up by hovercrafts. A buddy of mine went to use the porta shitter. As one of the hovercrafts was turning around, blew the porta shitter over with him in it. Wasn't so positive for him, but makes for a good story to tell. Seeing the Tigris and Euphrates River in an isolated part of Iraq. How clear and beautiful it was in the middle of this huge vast desert. Just thinking about the ancient civilizations that passed through there and shaped the world as it is today. Also being airborne. I am terrified of heights too, so it was really unnerving at first. But after you leave the plane and the chute slowly opens and it is quiet, you just float there and you are met with the immediate relief of any anxiety of the ordeal. That is until you land. And I'm a pretty big dude, so I would hit the ground like a ton of crap. I used to be a crew chief for Black Hawks. I was in the army at the time. We had a lot of fun, but the funniest memory that sticks out to me happened at a multi-service training operation in California. We were there for a month to help a Marine unit learn how to use aviation assets. They were a relatively new unit that had just been put together, and we were there to get them used to flying and what requests they could ask of us. Fairly straightforward stuff. Our lieutenant, Cole, was a pilot who hated the Marines with a passion. Never really found out why. So one day we had some time to kill and he had volunteered to take some of the newer Marines up to get them used to flying. So we get out to the flight line and get our checks done. Only instead of starting up, he turns to the LT, co-pilot, and me and says we are gonna have some fun. That we should all just play along. So the Marines show up and he just starts bitching and moaning about the aircraft won't start. It's too late to switch birds, and now he is upset and feels real bad for these Marines because he knew they wanted to fly real bad. So the Marines ask if there is anything they can do, and he tells them the only way to get the bird started is to push start it, like you would an old manual transmission vehicle. But you know, the aircraft is heavy and he wasn't sure it could be done. Well, that sparks the can-do and cocky attitude of the Marines. I should mention now there were about 10 of them. So I get out and line 9 of them along the bird so they can get leverage to push but not break anything. And I take the tallest, had to be 6 feet 2 or 6 feet 3, and place him up front. He is instructed that he will have to spin the main rotor by hand while running to stay in front of the bird. I climbed back in and told the lieutenant, Cole, they were ready, and asked if he seriously wanted to do this. All on commas so the Marines couldn't hear. We did have the apple fired up, so we had electrical systems. He says frick 'em and yells for them to start. So there we are. 3 army guys riding down a runway while 10 Marines try to push start the aircraft, laughing our asses off. They made one trip down, were able to turn the bird around and go back before they needed a rest. And what do you know? While they were resting, the bird was able to start. Guess it just needed to warm up a little first. I have posted this before, but it remains to this day my favorite memory of my time at war. I had a soldier that was a dumbass. One of the smartest stupid people I have ever known. He was socially inept and had no common sense, but he could tell you an inordinate amount about how to build a saltwater aquarium and what kind of fish to put in it. I loved this kid to death, but he also pissed me off so much that it was dangerous to my health. There was another soldier, Unco, Belly, who did PT with us in the morning while we were deployed. He was nasty. He didn't shower even after being told several times to shower. He would just go in the shower tent and sit down and read a book. He stunk so bad. I legit described his smell as a cat crap burrito left out in the sun for a couple days. He wasn't a bad guy. He was just a failure at being a soldier. One morning we were doing PT and he asked my special little snowflake what was in the small PX that we had. It had just been built and had only opened that week. This freaking kid says just the important stuff, like deodorant and body wash. I couldn't stand it. I tried so hard not to laugh. I had to set down my weights and walk away. I couldn't take it. The frick thing is that our favorite little dipshit had no idea what was so funny. He didn't say it to be mean. He didn't say it to make dude think about washing. He said it because in his mind, that was the only thing worth buying in our crappy little PX. It remains to this day his finest hour. It was the funniest thing he ever said. He could try to tell jokes for the next 15 years and never come close to the comedic genius he possessed in that instant. Too many to list really, but here's one. I met a guy with many daughters in Iraq. We stopped in some house on a routine city patrol. Think, beat cop walking around the neighborhood. Hi, we're the Americans. Everything cool? Seen any bad guys lately? Okay, have a nice night. We walk in, and this dude answers the door with 4 little girls around him, on holding his hand, one on his hip, the other 2 pulling at his dish. Think, man robe. So I'm like, are these all yours? Yup. Any boys? Nope. He just kind of shrugged and started laughing a bit. Now, understand, in that culture, you want sons. Having male kids is a source of pride. Men boast about how many sons they have. Because of it being such a patriarchal culture, you could almost think of having sons as a gain, and daughters as an expense. Both practically and socially, all the benefit is in having male heirs. This guy had ended up with nothing but daughters. So with both of us understanding this aspect, we both understand the unspoken context when I casually asked if he had any boys. That's why, when he answered back, he had this big bug grin and shoulder shrug like, hey, what are you gonna do? Right, you could see a genuinely good dad. Dude just loved his kids and wasn't sweating the cultural expectations, to the point that he had a sense of humor about it. Ah, wholesome Iraq. Most beautiful and funny thing I ever experienced. Watching rockets fly over and miss our free on board and strike the neighborhood that was on the other side, which pee off the local homegrown insurgents on that side, who then fired their own rockets over the base to the neighborhood on the side where the first rockets came from. This carried on for about 2 hours. It was like a wonderful fricked up version of 4th of July fireworks. A lot of people only think of PTSD, but I was fortunate enough to experience post-traumatic stress growth. I was struck by an IED in a mud hut thousands miles from home. 5 other guys in my squad were injuries, 2 most limbs. I only received shrapnel up my back and side. After we were evacuated, I was evacuated to make sure nothing went into my lungs. My injuries truly weren't that bad. It was basically road rash. I sat on a free on board for a week trying to get back to my unit. I was separated from everyone else who was injured and was in a weird purgatory. When I finally got back to my unit, I was able to talk it over with my platoon and they were great. I was basically deaf immediately after the explosion, so they informed me I was yelling the entire time at the top of my lungs, and we told stories and eventually received news that everyone else involved was alive and well. After reflecting on the events, I decided to take the experience and grow from it. I finally enrolled in college, overhauled my diet, moved on from a toxic relationship. It was a huge paradigm shift for me as well, politically and spiritually, but I won't get specific with those. It was the best worst thing to ever happen to me and makes me look forward to every day I have left here at home in America. Former Air Force here. Besides making lifelong friends and gaining skills that led to my current career, which is completely unrelated to my degree, the coolest thing was being asked for my autograph by a kid of about 9 at an air show. He matched up the squadron logo on my hat to the one on the side of the B-1B. I was an avionics specialist playing crew chief for the weekend, and wanted to meet someone on the crew. God, the B-1Bs are such a gorgeous aircraft. This happened somewhere in rural West Virginia, or maybe it was Ohio. I don't remember. My unit was driving across country for annual training and we had stopped for dinner at this barbecue place. There's a group of 8 of us and this little kid was just so excited to see a bunch of soldiers. I saw his mom telling him to go over and talk to us and he was really shy. I walked over and introduced myself and gave him my combat patch. I'll never forget the smile on that kid's face. My son was doing this at a coffee shop when he saw a police officer. I was encouraging him to go over, but he just couldn't get over the shyness. The cop left and came back with a badge sticker and gave it to him. He was ecstatic. Thank you for doing that. It's wonderful that something so simple can make someone so happy. I used to be an avionics maintainer on the C-17 and the Canadian Air Force. One day, as was fairly common, we were hit with a particularly nasty snowstorm. The plows had come by and pushed all of the snow into large 6-7 feet tall snowbanks along the edges of the ramp where we park the aircraft. A group of us were heading out to the ramp to receive an aircraft that was landing that evening and perform a standard check inspection, and out of nowhere my one buddy starts running. I had only been at the squadron for a few months at this point and wasn't even done my apprenticeship. So when I saw someone start running, I immediately assumed he saw something I hadn't and crap was about to hit the fan. I'm freaking out, looking all over trying to figure out what he had seen that caused him to run so urgently. And then without slowing down he jumps into the air and goes full starfish face first into the snowbank and just sticks there for a second. Then he casually rolls down the hill and sits up on his knees, rapid fire throwing snowballs at everyone else on the tow crew. I've been out for about a year now and that guy is just about the only dude I stay in contact with. Sounds like a great guy. Watching someone who couldn't swim willingly jump off of a 20-foot tower in full battle rattle and sink to the bottom before being rescued by the swimming instructors. You had to prove you couldn't swim before they'd teach you. It was beautiful watching someone prove they couldn't swim. I was a jet engine mechanic in the Air Force and I was giving this new guy some OJT on an engine stand. The engine stand was just two parallel metal tracks and the engine itself was mounted on metal cradles with rollers on the tracks. Anyway, I was showing this dude various parts of the engine and then we started trying to knock each other off the tracks we were standing on. This lifer walks by and starts yelling at me for horsing around and then says, "You call yourself a sergeant?" I said, "No, I call myself Dale, you call me sergeant." The lifer was not amused. A lack of appreciation for my wit from superiors directly led to my decision to leave the Air Force. So I've been doing this army thing since the late 80s, with a short break in the middle to try the whole civvy thing out. Spent some time in weird places where things go bump in the night, spent more time in the training system, producing the next generation, from basic up to majors. At this point, I think I've raised nearly 1,000 children. I have opened a book, written by one of my former lads, about his experience on tour, and discovered my name in the dedication, because something I said, late at night in some miserable OP, resonated with him and changed his life. It's humbling and beautiful. My unit was on a month-long humanitarian deployment to Guatemala. We visited orphanages and a shelter for kids with HIV. These kids were positively starved for attention and probably had the best day they'd had in a long time when we came to visit. Used to go to Guatemala for mission trips when I was in middle school. It's a gorgeous country and so many people are just so unbelievably kind. Even the cops there, who are by no means clean, want to help you help others, even if it's just driving along with you if you're in a not so nice place. I honestly can't count the number of truly beautiful moments I saw on my 5 or 6 trips. We helped a 4-year-old girl get heart surgery. There was a small town near our free on board in Iraq. We were meeting the man who ran the water pump for the town. In chatting with him, we learned his young daughter had a hole in her heart and required surgery. Chances of success for this surgery in Iraq were a bit low. Chances of success in the US were fairly high. I don't know if it's true, but I was told the operation she needed was relatively simple. This wasn't something we could fix with a med cap. But our team leader, Madge, was swayed by this and decided to make the girl our project. We started by trying to get them a visa. We went through normal channels, both Dept State and Army. We basically got told it wasn't happening. They were not interested in letting Iraqis go to America, even for a short medical visit. Our company decided we would do it on our own efforts. Since there appeared to be no method officially, we had the family drive to Jordan to get visas there. This was pre-Facebook, so it was tougher to marshal your social circle, but our team leader was connected in his hometown. One family donated the airfare, a surgeon donated his services. The dad and his daughter stayed with the wife of our team lead. She got the surgery. We did a lot of help for tactical reasons, and this one paid off as well, but it was also the one thing we did that made me feel good. Not my story, but my best friend was in the Marine Corps marching band. He told me a story about the time he filled a camelback with margaritas. He thought it was a good idea to do this the day before he marched in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. He said he never got that sick from drinking and he threw up several times before the start of the parade. He never got the margarita taste out of the camelback, or Afghanistan probably has some of the most beautiful scenery and most loving and giving people on earth. I've had them save my life on more than one occasion, and they will share what little they have with everyone. There is a strange element of relief when crap was getting bad and you hear the words, AC-130 gunship on station. We were taking fire from what seemed to be all around us, and a couple A-10s were called in. While they were giving us a direction of flight, the last words they said to us in the most hillbilly accent ever was, "We got you covered, little buddies." I'm pretty sure we owe our lives to someone with the call sign DustOffXX. For some reason I'm crying while writing this. I miss the fellas, the crazy stupid chances we took, and how any one of us would gladly take a bullet for each other. I flew for a long time under the DustOffXX. Some of those CASEVAC missions still have me waking up in sweats. ETA, in Iraq, not Afghanistan. One of those most beautiful things I've ever seen was when standing on the catwalk of an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Atlantic, full blackout. The wake was glowing the Siri green, with glimpses of ghostly dolphins giving chase, all while the stars were brighter than I've ever seen them. There was something surreal about being amongst such beauty while standing on this giant war machine. The glowing wake was always incredible to see. The first time I saw it, it was so pale I was certain my eyes were playing tricks on me. I ended up leaning pretty far out over the edge of the fantail, trying to prove there was something there, and nearly deep-sixed myself when the lookout popped up at my elbow to ask what the heck I was doing. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.